Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip. Since last night, a lot has happened between Israel and Iran. Iran started off by firing a barrage of about 180 ballistic missiles into Israel. And somehow, Israel was able to intercept most of them. Well, some did manage to get through and fall in localities in Israel, damaging certain properties, but there was no loss of life. The main target for Iran was the Mossad headquarters as well as two air bases. Now, Israel is known for its air defense systems. It has a eight-layered air defense systems, but somehow the missiles still manage to get in. And one wonders then what happens in the case of India if tomorrow there is a conflict. Remember that Israel is a very small country, so the air defense is pretty good, but it can't be compared to a country like, let's say, India, or for that matter, China. And to understand what has happened so far and what is in there for us in the Indian context, I have with me the former DG, that is the Director General of the Artillery, Lieutenant General P. Ravi Shankar. Thank you so much for joining us at the Print, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Snehesh. Always a pleasure to interact with you. A lot of things going on. You have the Iran-Israel spat going on. Ukraine war continues, and the South China Sea also is hotting up. A lot of action
Absolutely.
and lot of action around us also. Kashmir elections, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and all. So let's go. What we'll take off wherever you want.
So you rightly mentioned a lot of action is happening across the world right now, and so if you could just tell our viewers what exactly has happened between Iran and Israel. What were these missiles that were used by Iran, and how did the Israelis intercept them? Were the US also involved in it?
Yeah. First and foremost, we know that what's happened over the past few days, and Israel has virtually decapitated the Hezbollah, the Hamas, and also degraded the Houthis. It took, Iran had to respond to the situation, and it responded by firing about 180 to 200. The figure is hazy missiles. These are all ballistic missiles. Unlike in the previous time when they fired those 300 odd drones and cruise missiles and all that, there was no signaling this time. It was an absolute straight launch. Now, when you say ballistic missiles, these are all long range missiles which had over 1,000 kilometers range. And when you say ballistic missiles in that sense, they go out into the out of the atmosphere and come back, right? Serious stuff. And some of them were fired at hypersonic speeds. And say from launch to landing, hitting the targets would be about 10 to 12 minutes. That's it. And they fired 200 of these at 3, 4, 5 targets. I mean, that those figures will come out. But Israel, with its multi-layered system, was able to intercept most of them. And of course, the US has said that they've intercepted some. There's no have they or not. They have. And that's how a few will get through. Uh, in the larger context, when the last time the spat took place, people were saying the quantity has its own quality and they'll get through and all that. But is having fired 200, just about 2 or 3 or 4, we don't know the exact number, having got through, I think is a major uh, victory of its local victory of its kind for Israel. It's been able to hold off Iran. And it's been able to do so because of its multi-layered defense systems. It's also been able to do so because of the kind of intelligence system it has built in. Uh, right now, this intelligence system, I would, is multi-layered. The way things are going, it's not hard to guess. First and foremost, I think Israel had some, human on ground. It also had electronic intelligence. Right? These two are fundamental, which I think is this. The second thing is once they took off from there, they had space-based intelligence. Whether they had it of their own capability or they were piggybacking on, the US capability, one doesn't know. And they also had aerial intelligence. So all these four combined together, uh, and the local, last point, every point had its own tracking radars and all that. And so it's a five-layered system, and plus multiple layers of air defense. So they've been able to knock off most of them. It's a very complicated kind of a system, but I think they've been quite adept at it. We also must remember Israel knew exactly how Iran would go about it because in the last strike they got the full rehearsal, and in
Yeah.
between the Houthis and the Hezbollah kept rehearsing them, especially the Houthis. Why Houthis? Because the Houthis fired long range. With Hezbollah, it was only the Iron Dome and all that. But against Houthis, they would have gone to the use of the arrows and all that, the higher level thing. So I think overall, Israel has done well in this round at least. How it will retaliate and how it will go forward is another story. But I think the more important thing, like you rightly pointed out, is what is it that we do? What are the lessons we imbibe from this? After
Because
all, we
that's
have to, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead, go ahead,
no,
go ahead, go ahead.
you rightly mentioned about how does it imbibe for us and what lessons do we learn from it, and that was my next question to you. Is from an Indian context. Now, Israel is a very small country, right? They have multiple air defense systems, from their spiders to the arrow systems that they have. Now, in an Indian context, does India have the capability to withstand a barrage of ballistic missiles that could be fired from, let's say, from a western neighbor, that is Pakistan, or from a northern neighbor, which is China? Of course, we have air defense systems, we have the S-400 Triumph and other things. But does India really have the capability to stop such an attack similar to what Iran has launched?
Okay. Um, at the outset, let me say yes and no, because you have to see it in a layered manner. Why? You can't compare the Israel situation with our situation, right? Israel, say with Iran or Hezbollah or Houthis, their threat was more from the air or through the rockets, not air. It's just through the rockets. So Israel could concentrate on that and carry on. And there's no, contact battle most of the time, except now that they've gone in and they have undertaking contact battles. Especially with Iran, which is their main adversary, there's just no contact battle.
Because
It's
they
only
don't share a
completely
land border.
non, they don't share a land border. And more importantly, Iran is a one-dimensional force. When I say one-dimensional force, it doesn't have a navy of note. It doesn't have an air force. Its land forces have never attacked or carried out any complicated operations. So, to that extent, vis-a-vis Israel, it's a one-dimensional force, right? So, Iran is very clear. Israel is very clear how to block Iran. Use electronic warfare, use space-based assets, and use anti-missile defense, and Iran is blocked. In our case, whether it's Pakistan or China,
China.
ours is completely multi-domain, right? Neither country, both the countries, can't think. Firstly, let me put it that way: can't think of unleashing such a barrage. One. Number two, even if they do unleash a barrage, let's take the worst case scenario that we can't handle it. I'm not. That's not the case, but we can't handle it. But we are a big country. We can take the punishment. Now, secondly, uh, you know, uh, the China-India context is a little more, I wouldn't say little more, lot more nuanced because both are nuclear countries. So is with Pakistan.
Pakistan.
Yeah. So the space for the kind of warfare which is going on in West Asia doesn't exist here.
Okay.
You can't afford to unleash a barrage of missiles like this, long range, over 1,000 kilometers, and hope that you can control escalation. After all, if you look at the South China Sea scenario, uh, the whole story. I mean, if you look at what's happening between China and Philippines, how big is China and how small is Philippines? But yet, even there, China has taken trouble not to even fire one bullet.
Yeah.
Because the moment the bullet is fired, the USA gets into the scene and the whole dynamics change. Similarly, in our context, if you see, they repeatedly ensure that they don't fire. Why? It is, tomorrow's warfare with China is not going to be just exchange of missiles, firepower, aircraft, things like that. It's going to be multi-domain, multi-dimensional, and in the toughest of terrains, right? And in a terrain like high altitudes, the missiles, if they miss, it goes off by a mile. And in high altitude, all these control systems, all these, things are not that great. They tend to misbehave. And there's always a question mark about PLA missile systems. Don't forget that. After all, so many of their PLA generals have been sacked. And, and even in the Taiwan crisis, when they fired, some of their missiles went awry. And there have been reported cases. Reported cases means within China, where some of the DF-21 or DF-15, they fired from the coast and it landed in the outskirts of Beijing, and it took out an apartment block. This is recorded and circulated within Weibo. So, so really speaking, I don't know whether China will embark on such a mission at all. And if you see what they did with their ICBM test and all that, it's a signal, right? Uh, One way of looking at the test which they did was it's a signal to the world that we have this capacity. The other way of looking at it is to assure themselves that bhai ye jayega ki nahi wahan tak. Okay. So these are things. And beyond the point, the moment you get into the nuclear dimension, you are looking at deterrence dynamics, you're looking at political games. It's a political weapon. Nuclear weapons are political weapons. So I don't think we can compare the Iran-Israel situation to our situation.
Okay.
Plus, another fact is that you know, especially with China, the border is held in strength. It's porous. Okay, if China resorts to missiles in the way we think and imagine, we can do more. It's not as if we don't have, and it's not as if we don't have, a response to China, right? And we also must understand Tibet is still not a settled question in China. So certain amount of troops, wherewithal, everything, China has to keep in its hinterland,
Yeah.
right? It can't get away. So to think that China will fire so many missiles and in such a thing, and that we will not be able to stop them, I think is uh, it won't happen. I mean, it's beyond my thinking at least. But having said that, do we have the capability to stop them? That's the next question.
Yeah.
The yeah, the S-400 is a very, very potent system. And we have other systems also, part of our BMD, which are not publicized. Plus, we have air defense systems, uh, all that. The question which we need to ask ourselves is, do we have a Recce strike integration system which puts all these things together? So when I say Recce strike integration, what does it mean? Integration of the Recce element and the strike element. That's the
Okay.
fundamental. So when you say Reiki element, let's say what are the Reiki elements? Uh, the Reiki elements, again, I'll go, it's the ground-based, human-based intelligence, intelligence which you get from forward troops, intelligence you get from electronic warfare or electronic methods, intelligence which you get the aerial route and the space routes. So these four you need to get and synthesize it, put AI into it, put a program into it, and use it. And for that you need a whole lot of multi-domain approach and analysis, right? Including a whole lot of software, AI, A, B, C, D, E. That's one. So that tells you something more about the whoever is going to launch against you than you otherwise know. Intelligence. The second thing is real time monitoring. Once a chap fires, how do you get him and how do you intercept him? That means you need definitely real time space based
Assets.
monitoring
Yeah.
and ground based radars, long range. Especially those ballistic missiles which go into space. In our context with China, you also need to be careful about the hypersonic cruise missiles they have, right? And the hypersonic, what they call DF-17s and
Yeah.
DF-21s, right? They're supposed to be carrier killers and all that, which they have good capability. Now, how do you detect them and catch them? It's not as if you can't, you can. Okay. So I've spoken to you about I mean, when you say Reiki, so it is intelligence and monitoring. Next is you should have the ability to strike. That means a set of missiles, anti-ballistics, anti-rocket missiles, which can take on each of these, right? Especially the hypersonic variety. Uh, that's the second part. And the third is the integration part, which means an effective command and control system. And now this effective command and control system has to be beyond services. That means you're looking at theaterization. And this has to be a theaterized approach, cutting across Army, Navy, Air Force. Because such a thing can happen in sea also, right? With the ranges which of
Yeah.
missiles which China has. So we need to look at that. So theaterization becomes an important thing. If you really see the Israeli method, right? They've used a theaterized approach. I mean, have you ever heard of any spokesperson from Israel talking of the Air Force, Navy, or the Army? They
It's the
talk of
IDF.
Israeli
It's a
Defense
combined
IDF.
entity.
It's a combined entity, and their approaches are combined, and they combine it well with their Mossad. You see, the thing is, their int operations or the external int operations, human. I call it human, but it encompasses a lot more. We all know that is well meshed with their military operations. Are we good at it? Because our history has shown that we've not been good at it, whether it's Kargil or Eastern Ladakh, or external intelligence or internal intelligence or military intelligence are still working in silos. I mean,
Absolutely.
we know that.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of issues which we need to learn from what's happened with Israel. And yeah,
So, before coming to this point, we spoke about the S-400. It's a different thing that we've ordered for 5 regiments. Only 2 have been delivered. The rest, I don't know when it would be delivered. The Russia is taking its time because of the ongoing conflict. Now, the other thing that you mentioned was the BMD. Now, BMD, the phase one of the BMD is completed. And by BMD viewers, I mean the ballistic missile defense shield.
defense.
Uh, and the phase one is complete. The phase two is now undergoing development trials and other things. But then it is also BMD is also city specific. It's not a country as such. Like the BMD first would be focusing on, let's say, the national capital. It will focus on the financial capital, which is Mumbai, and important cities. But from a larger scale, let's assume, forget a barrage of missiles that would be fired. If do we have the kind of numbers that we need to defend ourselves, or if there is a conflict that arises, and if the Chinese start firing in their cruise missiles, hypersonic cruise missiles that you mentioned, and their ballistic thing. Isn't it when I at times when I think of it, it's scary. It's something which is not happening, in the sense that because it's nuclear countries are involved, so the threshold would be different, unlike in the Middle East that you mentioned. But do we really have those numbers in place? Before forget the I'll come to the larger organizational part of it.
See, when you talk of ballistic missile defense, you are looking primarily to ward off a nuclear attack also.
Exactly. It's a pure,
Okay.
more largely a
Mo-
nuclear one.
Nuclear. When you look at the tactical picture, operational picture of the enemy using you know normal missiles against operational and tactical targets, you have the S-400s. They're good. Yeah, you have the air defense. You have the air defense layout of the Air Force. What we need to do, I mean, I don't know whether it's done or not, but there's a work in progress. We need to get the space element into it, which the problem with our space-based assets
Assets.
is that, yeah, I wouldn't say space-based asset or space program. Everything is largely civilian. The incorporation of the military into the space, the way it should be done, I think we're lagging behind.
Okay.
That's my sense, which I get when I speak to a lot of people. Um, uh, is this is ISRO and whatever we have well integrated with the all our other elements possible, right? Plus, we also have in sharing agreement with the Americans. I mean, if you don't have capabilities, one way is to make partnerships and alliances, which we have. So I'm not too worried at this point of time that we can't handle a threat, right? But can you handle tomorrow's threat on your own when things start failing? That is my worry. Okay, and especially when you have a unstable neighbor like Pakistan. I'm not too worried about China. Let me be very honest with you. It is Pakistanis who are more unstable in this regard because any of their systems can be infiltrated. If suppose a jihadi gets hold of it and then takes off within or outside, which is always a question mark. Then what happens?
Oh, that's a
So
fear within Pakistan also.
yeah, that's a fear within Pakistan. It's a fear everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't count that out. Can you handle that? If you can handle that, I think we are okay. But
Okay.
does Pakistan have the numbers to handle that? I mean, to pose that kind of a missile threat? It doesn't. The good thing is Pakistan doesn't have the numbers to pose that kind of a missile threat. It might have nuclear weapons, but not conventional warheads. I don't think it has that numbers. China has. The PLARF has. But China, like I said, the ball game is completely different.
So you've always been a very strong proponent of the rocket force. The
Yeah,
Chinese have the rocket force, which all these long range missiles comes under the rocket force. We also have the strategic forces command, but which looks purely at from a nuclear point of view, right?
yeah,
We don't have a rocket force kind of a concept of long range missiles, of hitting missiles, and even what we have in for example, BrahMos. The total amount of BrahMos that we have is less than what Russia fired at Ukraine. Similar kind of missiles that Russia fired at Ukraine within the 1 week of the start of the conflict. That's the total kind. So in terms of numbers, we are less. But what is your view on this rocket force thing? And do you think that the future wars a lot would be on these long range missile systems that would be in play? Or would there be actual contact war? When I say contact war, land war,
mhm, yeah.
basically.
Okay, first, let me rule out the fact that, as much as contact warfare has not gone out of the equation. In fact, it is the equation. You see all the, conflicts which have happened in the recent past. Take our own case with, in Galwan, it's a contact battle, or Yangtze, contact battle. Go to Taliban versus America, USA,
Contact.
contact battle. Look at it, Israel, Gaza, contact.
Contact.
Ukraine war, contact. Even in South China Sea, what's happening is contact battle. So to think that contact battle will not be there is this thing of non-contact warfare will be there to a particular level. If you want to keep the threshold of the conflict down, you would like to keep it non-contact, like we want to do with Pakistan or China tomorrow. So the contact levels of non-contact, I mean, so the threshold levels of the non-contact battle will be kept low. So to that extent, the question comes: do you need a rocket force for that? You really don't need a rocket force for that. Okay, that's the first point. But if you have a plethora of rockets and missiles, do you need a structure like a rocket force? Okay, we have to look at it slightly differently. I'll explain. If you and see the only country which has a rocket force of its kind is China.
China.
No, the rocket force PLARF of China is a mixture of conventional and nuclear warheads.
Yeah.
It is not purely conventional. It is not purely rocket. There, whatever is not in the rocket force is conventional artillery, which is part of their theaters.
Yeah.
Right? That's nowhere connected with the PLARF. So, to that extent, if you want a rocket force, you already have a strategic forces command that has to be enlarged. But then you have to, the thinking for that force is more political in nature.
Okay.
Okay. The thinking for that is more political in nature. Do you have that political thinking to go that route? Is a question mark, because China always thought of it politically. The second artillery force, which has been converted into the PLARF, has been thought so. Now, the employment of a non-nuclear rocket force is no different from the normal employment of rockets in any firepower. I mean, in conventional battles. So, to that extent, do you need a rocket force for normal theaters? Is a thing. My personal view: if you want a rocket force, it has to be dual task, conventional and
As
nuclear,
well as nuclear.
and with a strategic thinking and a political thinking. Otherwise, you don't need a rocket force because it doesn't give you any benefit. As far as the numbers are concerned, you said BrahMos, we have only what we have, what Russia fired off in a week, 10 days, or whatever it is. Remember, uh, BrahMos uh, could be anything between 20 to 50 crores. When I say 20 to 50 crores, few years back it was 20 crores. Today it might be 50 crores.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a ballpark figure. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you have too many numbers, you would just be locking up that money and then expending a lot in maintaining it.
Maintaining them
Okay, it's
and
costly
storing them.
and storing them. So storage, maintaining, and it's dead money. We have had cases in our history where complete systems have come into service and gone out of service without being fired in anger. Would you like to spend so much money uh, and locking it up in that manner? So, what we need to do is we have to think through this whole story as to how much should we have as the basic minimum, and then what is the capability you need to build to sustain a longer duration war, like what happened in Russia, Ukraine, and what kind of a war fighting thought process you want to have. Uh, the Russian way of thinking was to paralyze the whole thing with firepower and all that because they didn't have infantry, they didn't have manpower, and they were looking at more at shock and awe and things like that. uh, we might not look at it that way. So, what is our, uh, operational doctrine is a moot point. So, that brings me to the next thing. Uh, you don't have a joint operational doctrine,
Yeah.
right? So, you don't have a joint doctrine. The joint operational doctrine is a direct derivative of your national security strategy or doctrine.
Yeah.
We don't
Which
have
is
that
also,
also in play.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, So our problems are not what we have. Our problems are what we don't have, and that's part of the command and control structure, right? Like I said, you don't have you're not a theaterized. You don't have a joint services operational doctrine or operational manual by which you go by, and you don't have a system of you don't have a national security strategy. You don't have even your you, for example, you develop the you develop a triad capability. You develop the MIRV capability when you fired Agni 5. Okay, but your nuclear doctrine is still no first use. Okay, have you refined that? That's the question. China is expanding its nuclear missile at the rate of knots. We all know that. They're implicit in their whole story is they've changed their nuclear doctrine without stating. Uh, are we thinking on those terms? How do you mesh the nuclear, approach with the conventional approach? How do you mesh them? Is something which we need to think, and I think it's a lot of work in progress. Uh, we are still stuck with theaterization. If I heard the chief of army staff yesterday, he spoke of theaterization. The government is yet to take a decision on it. So I think we have a way to go in that.
So my last question to you, I know we're running short of time.
No, it's okay.
If
No, go ahead.
if you had to change, if you had to, let's say, do three or four things that you would like to change or you would like to do, given the context of what we saw is happening in the Middle East, for in Indian context, what would that be? First, I know for
Well,
sure is theatrization that you're passionate
uh,
about and you focus
yeah.
on.
Oh, the first thing we must understand is we don't lack equipment on ground. We don't have the man. We don't lack the manpower on ground. We don't lack the capability to handle all these things on ground. People keep saying आत्मनिर्भरता ये सामान लो वो नहीं है वगैरह. That is fine. With what do you have the force multiplier capability for with what you have is the question mark. So the first thing I would like to have, of course, like you said, I would like a national security doctrine or a document by which we need to function as a whole, and we need to take a whole of country approach. For example, when I say whole of country approach, can you integrate your civil aviation with your military aviation? Can you integrate your civil space with your military space, and so on and so forth? So that is, I think, very important. The second thing is, I think you need to develop your space capability. Space is ubiquitous by nature today. Anything you do in the military sphere is space based. Whether it is communication, it's space based. You want navigation, it is space based. You want control of even UAVs, it is space based.
It's space.
Missiles, space based. Okay, so space is something which I think we need to focus on quite a bit. Then the third thing which I said, Recce strike integration. Recce strike integration between all the forces which we have, I think is very, very important. In terms of hardware, we have enough missiles. I have no doubt about that. We did a terrific thing by long back, take a cue from before, by putting together this artillery divisions in the army. I commanded an artillery div. That's why I know what I'm talking of. The artillery div in which is there one per theater. We have three of them. We need more. Uh, had this capability of putting this Ricky strike integration together, had this capability of getting the Air Force on board or going on board the Air Force. I'm just giving you an example. So you need integrating structures to maximize your firepower. And tomorrow's battle is more about firepower than anything else. So I
Yeah.
think these are the three, four things which we have to put in place. And of course, communications. Communications are something which are very important, which we need. Let me take it one step further. To put all these things together, you need compute power, you need AI, you need cloud. Those are the things which we need to focus on. Uh, are we doing it? I see that we're thinking of doing something. But today everyone talks of cyber narrative and this and that AI very loosely. But it has to be focused, specific, to the point. And these are the few things I think we need to go ahead. In fact, some of these I spoke a few days back in some of these seminars. In fact, yesterday I spoke in the Chanakya Defense Dialogues just after, in a panel discussion with the Vice Chief
Yeah. Yeah.
also. Yeah,
Okay. So fair enough. So if I the big takeaways from from this discussion, for me would be first that you can't uh, compare what is happening in the Middle East to what is there in the Indian subcontinent vis-a-vis both with China and Pakistan. That's a situation that you can't compare or just replace with each other. The second important point that you mentioned was the fact that we do have the capability and we do have the numbers that is required, but you don't but maybe not for a barrage of missiles that could come, but you don't foresee any such scenario happening between India, Pakistan, or India and China. The other thing that you mentioned is the need for the Recce command and control
yeah.
uh,
Recce strike integration.
Reiki strike integration that you mentioned about, which is what you said is really important because then it brings all the elements together, and also the fact that to begin with we need to really have our own national security doctrine, something that this government, I still remember this was way back in 2017 if I'm not mistaken, when this government had initiated work on it, and I remember doing a story on it, but now it is 2024. uh, the document is still under works, but hopefully, and I completely agree with you, sir, when that we need to have at least a doctrine in place, a national doctrine in place before we actually start talking about joiners, and we talk about a joint doctrine per se. But thank you so much, General, for speaking to the print. It's always a pleasure. I'm sure the viewers have been enlightened a lot and you've given us a lot of thinking points to ponder about. uh, till we meet again, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.